Hello, I'm Greg EG.IdrA, and this is a Razer Academy replay analysis. Today I'll be looking at a Roach drop all-in versus a greedy mech Terran.
Here we have me, EG.IdrA as the blue Zerg in the bottom left, and here we have Neeb as the red Terran in the top left. He's the ladder Terran. A pretty good player, not sure if it's a smurf of a pro gamer Terran or not. Definitely a non-Korean player. Reasonably good, very aggressive player, and he's been around since the Wings of Liberty ladder. Just not sure who he is, but definitely good enough to beat me with mech, and that is kind of the point of this replay review. Zergs thus far in HOTS have been struggling quite a bit with Terran mech, particularly defensive, very turtly Terran mech. And this is actually one way that I have been approaching to kind of get around that problem, and that is by not facing it. A lot of Terrans are being very, very greedy, as Terran now is great defensively. It always was great defensively with planetary siege tanks, sensor towers, turrets, bunkers, and whatnot. However, with the addition of the Widow Mine, as well as the Hellbat mode for the Hellion, which gives it quite a bit of extra DPS, as well as armor, or HP, which makes it much more tanky, allows it to absorb more damage. Just basically, also the removal of the siege upgrade, this Terran, or siege tanks coming out with siege mode. Terran's just gotten even better defensively. Also, Reapers forcing Zerg to start out on the back foot, not as strong of an economy early on that can transition into a good attack. So Terrans are just feeling more and more safe early on to be very greedy. And this is becoming quite problematic for Zergs, as it puts Terran in a pretty big advantage going into the mid and late game, as they have so much economy to build off of. However, Terrans are getting overly complacent with that state of the game. They're feeling the Zergs are not going to attack them just because Zergs are so afraid of that defensive capability. And we'll see lots of Terrans just putting down tons of orbital commands early on off of just a handful of units. And this is one way that I found to actually punish that. It bypasses a lot of those defenses. If you're relying too much on planetaries or widow mines or siege tanks or whatnot, drop is actually a great way to bypass that. You can mass up so many units that if you're actually able to get in and engage the Terran unit to unit, you'll easily win the fight. And the problem is actually just bypassing that front line of defenses, and drop, of course, is the logical way to do that. And so this game we will be seeing me do something actually pretty reminiscent of Hyun's ZVP build in Wings of Liberty, which is actually just get up to a 3-base, pretty much full saturation with a macro hatchery, 4 hatcheries. And then also upgrades, very important, because you do want your units to be relatively strong. It's not really an all-in, even though it is a very powerful mid-game attack that does have to do a lot of damage. But you do want your units to be pretty strong and reliable, and you are going to be near max with 3-base saturation. So you want some ability to transition from this into a regular army. So upgrades, very macro-oriented, and you get up that 3-base saturation. And then you just put everything into units, max out on Roachling, load it all up, and go attack them and hopefully kill them. So that's what we'll be aiming for in this game. I open up with 15 hatchery. On this map, this is a 4-player map, so I don't drone scout. I feel it's more efficient to actually just save that drone and put down a defensively safe pool around 14 or 15 supply after your hatchery, just in case anything happens. That drone scout isn't guaranteed to find your opponent in time to actually give you any relevant information anyway, and proxy Rex Reaper is much less common on a 4-player map. So I feel it's better to just save the scout drone and not spend that economy. We see that my opponent has opened 1 Rex Reaper, and he does actually get 1 drone kill with it. That's somewhat common. And I feel that if he does get 1 or 2 drone kills, then it's a pretty big advantage for Terran, because the problem with the Reaper opening is that it actually forces forces gas units out of the Zerg in order to take that 3rd base. In Wings of Liberty, especially towards the end, the common path for Zerg was to just take 3 bases with no gas, depend on their queens and spine crawlers, and then eventually Zerglings to defend against any kind of pressure coming out of the Terran. And any kind of 2-base build by Zerg was essentially a cheese. You had to do damage, nearly game-ending damage, because of the efficiency of mules, to actually have a chance to win the game off of 2 bases. What Reapers do, there we see a little bit of miscontrol by him. That should never ever happen. Reapers should not get chased down before Speedlings, but he miscontrolled it a bit. As I was saying, what happens with Reapers is they actually just force gas units because they cannot be caught off creep by anything except for Speedlings in the early game. So obviously this just denies the Zerg's 3rd base until they actually get Speedling. So they start very behind economically, whereas we see the Terran already has his 2nd base up, he already has his 2nd orbital, and in fact putting down his 3rd command center. Plus he also has the factory finished. And that's kind of what I was talking about with the Terran greed. They're just so safe because they get so much map control early game. He can now get out Widow Mines should he choose to, or Hellbats, which are still incredibly efficient, and just be completely safe while on already an economic advantage when his units are more efficient. So this is kind of the uncomfortable situation that Zergs are put in, and this is the reason I have been looking for some more aggressive builds to kind of punish this Terran greed. We see that third command center already half done. I've just now put down my third base. And again, Zerg units are not as efficient as Terran units, so Zerg really needs that massive economy to be able to overwhelm their opponent and just kind of out-muscle them, not beat them with finesse or efficiency. And here we see my Roach Warren is going down as well as my Evolution Chamber. You need to get that Roach Warren quite early on, as you do have to worry about particularly Widowmine-based timings. Hellbat timings used to be more dangerous. Now, however, requiring the armory upgrade shouldn't be as big of a threat. Obviously, that's changed in the metagame. It's still relatively new and untested. There may be timings that can come out of that. However, Widowmine plus Bio, definitely the scarier early game push right now, but it's still very helpful to have Roaches in combination with your Circling Baneling to hold that off. We see the +1 attack coming pretty quickly. That is the result of my scouting. I went in, poked, saw he was going mech, and started going that +1 upgrade. I've seen some Zerg players, particularly Hyun, go Roach HYDRA even against Bio, in which case you can just blindly open the +1 ranged attack. However, I feel that's pretty bad. I just don't feel that Bio, even with Viper support, or Roach HYDRA, even with Viper support, is going to beat Bio. So I think you do need to scout and check. Go Carapace if you have to play blind. If they are going Bio, then I think you want to go melee and still go Mutilating Baneling. In this case, I did see that he was going mech. I confirmed that, and then immediately go +1 range attack. I'm putting down my macro hatch very early. The thing about Roachling is that it's actually very cost efficient. You can produce a lot of units that are very powerful for their cost, as they're very cheap. Roaches and Zerglings obviously are some of the cheapest units in the game. However, they're not supply efficient or larva efficient. They really they take up a lot of supply and they burn through larva very, very quickly. So you need a ton of larva to actually produce units at the rate that you're taking in resources off of 3-base production or 3-base income. So you need that macro hatchery running very, very early on. You need to definitely stay on top of your larva injects. So here we see he is already moving out to take that third base. And again, not even a tank out yet, just now putting down his tech labs. And again, this is the greed I'm talking about. This is what you really have to punish. Terran can definitely get away with some greed because they are very good defensively, and that allows them to get away with an extra orbital in there here and there. However, this kind of thing, Zerg absolutely has to play a little bit more aggressive just to punish that, make the Terran players play more wary, more cautiously, because there's no real way to fight on an even footing with a Terran who gets this kind of a this type of an advantage in a macro game early on. We see a little bit of Hellion harass by him, and it did kill quite a few drones. Not a ton, not enough to force me to go all in. However, I was planning on doing this mid-game attack anyway. We see that my lift upgrade is already nearly half done. You want to start that as soon as your lair finishes. Also getting Carapace and Roach speed, of course, very important in a kind of Roach-based attacks. You absolutely have to have that speed. I do not get Burrow in this game. That is something you can consider. It's entirely up to you. Unfortunately, the fact that Terran is getting so many orbitals early on means that they do have a lot of scan available to do them right away. Also, we see getting +2 ranged attack as well as almost finishing that Carapace upgrade. Everything coming, not going to wait for that +2 attack upgrade. It's just it doesn't fit within the build. There's not enough time for it. You have to move out in that window of opportunity before the Terran really gets his production rolling. We see he is also getting a Thor here. Pretty hard for them to be sure that you're not going muta. You just have to try and avoid them seeing a big mass of roaches. Keep a little bit of ambiguity in what you're doing, and force them to diversify. As we see, he's putting down a bunch of turrets. He's worried that there may possibly be a muta attack coming. He can't go pure Thors. We're just now getting that Hellbat upgrade, so he's not going to have the tanking ability that he would had he already had Hellbats, obviously. And we see he has almost no tanks, now starting 5-fact production. We'll also see a handful of orbital commands come down here in a second, right as my attack is going in. Just playing with total disregard for whatever the Zerg is doing, and there we see the 3 extra command centers going down at the same time. Just, as I said, complete disregard for whatever the Zerg is doing, feeling absolutely sure that he's going to be able to defend anything that comes at him. And really, actually, just feeling sure that the Zerg's not going to throw anything at him out of fear of how good Mech is defensively. The thing to remember is that Mech is good defensively. This cannot be your only tactic, as if they do prepare for it, they will absolutely hold it off. However, against a Terran who is playing greedy, who's expecting you to play macro, you can go right in and kill them like this. And we see he only has a couple of tanks sieged up. He has that 1 Thor. Very important to keep some overlords full as you go into the high ground. There will almost always be tanks up there in order to deal damage from a more defensible location. So you got to make sure you can get some roaches up there to pick those off. And here, just kind of attack moving in for the kill. Not really a whole lot to see there. This was really just a demonstration that you can actually punish them, and kind of their build order that you can use to do so.
That was a successful Roach drop all-in versus a greedy mech Terran. This has been a Razer Academy replay analysis, and thank you for watching. Hello, I'm Greg at EG.IdrA. This is the Razer Academy replay analysis. Today I'll be taking a look at how to defend a series of Protoss all-ins based on the new mothership core versus a Korean Protoss on the ladder.
So here we have me, EG.IdrA, as the red Zerg in the top right. And in the bottom left we have a Korean Protoss. This is a ladder game. I'm not sure entirely who he is. Obviously a Korean Smurf. However, he has been playing the HOTS ladder since pretty early on, since well before the switch of the majority of the Koreans. And he's always been one of the more